Welcome to another Fenestration Canada podcast.
This podcast is a presentation of Quanex Building Products. You are listening to Fenestration in Canada with Pat Flannery and Stéphane Labelle.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Fenestration in Canada. This is Pat Flannery. I'm the editor of Fenestration Review magazine. And joining me today is Laura Weil from Eurovina Windows. Say hi, Laura.
Hello.
Hello. And also here is Stéphane Labelle, your executive director.
Hey, Pat. Hey, Laura.
Hey, how you doing?
Not too bad.
So Fenestration in Canada, guys, as you know, is brought to you by Quanex and UL Labs. Very happy to have their support for this. And our mission here today, should we choose to accept it, is to take a look at a survey that Fenestration Canada sent out, just asking about some member opinions, some member attitudes at this crazy time we're all having. Stéphane, why don't you tell us a little bit about the survey and what the idea was here to collect information?
Well, so of course, with everything happening so fast, the first thing that happened is that, well, not the first one, but the first main crisis, if you will, that we had to face here is when construction was shut down in the province of Quebec. So the first thing we wanted to know is, do our members expect us to, go and try and fight it? Should we, back this decision? Should we help? How can we help? So it started this discussion internally here, and we just figured, well, we're gonna ask everyone what they think and how they're living the whole crisis, and so that's why we put that online. And since then, we've got tons of answers, tons of response to the survey, and we got quite a lot of government, some ministry reaching out to us to know what the results were. We had several people in different industries asking what it was looking like, so we decided today to present it to our membership and everyone at the same time, so we can have a good idea.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I guess basically what we're going to do here is just more or less walk through the survey. Stéphane, you've got it up on the screen there.
Yes.
And we'll just maybe take a look and maybe offer some comments on some of the results that we've got here. Well, I think the first one about what type of membership is not.
We can touch it a little bit.
Well, you can look at that. I mean, I guess the big thing is the number of manufacturers that got in on that, right?
Yeah, so we have around 60% manufacturers because we had the English and the French survey, right? So French is 96% of the people who answered the French survey are from Quebec. So we can safely say that the results, the French one reflect a little bit more what Quebec thinks, and the English one a little bit more like the rest of Canada. But for the English one, we have around 60% of manufacturers, and we have around the same thing on the French side. The main difference is that we had 36% of suppliers to answer the French one, so it was really almost only manufacturers and suppliers, and not a lot of associates and other non-members. Whereas in the English survey, we still have a 16% of non-members that decided to fill out the survey, even if they're not FenCan members.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What's your sense of how that works with the overall membership breakdown of the association, Stéphane? Is that pretty much how your numbers are?
No, I would say that we're, from the last time I looked, we're pretty much a little bit more manufacturers, but not. I don't think we're like 60% manufacturers and only 20 suppliers. I think it's something that touched manufacturers directly, so we got a bigger response from them.
Here's a guess, Laura. Tell me what you think. Is this because the dealers are not in their offices? because
I would assume that not too many dealers would have received the survey.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Because the dealer number is tiny. But that's
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and they were not the main. They're
weren't the
first
main.
of all, they're not the main members for FenCan.
Yeah.
We started this year with the dealer membership, so that's why I would think.
Oh yeah, I thought we had a few more dealers than that. Okay, all right, my bad. Gotcha.
From what I've seen, though, most of the dealers have really scaled down because they either need to get into a home to quote or they need to get into a home to install.
That's been my thinking, and you basically can't have a showroom going. Well, I mean a dealer usually doesn't have more than one or two people in their showroom at a time, anyways. So I guess you could have a showroom open, but probably a lot of people have chosen not to do that.
Yeah.
Even if they were designated essential, which I think in most of the country they could have been. Although, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's an easy one. I bet a lot of them shut down.
I think at least what we can say with this response is that, from what I see, is it's a safe assumption to think that it's the answers we get are a good reflection of they reflect what our membership is thinking. I don't know if Laura you agree to that, but
I was really curious to see the response on this, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. I want to see where it goes.
Yeah. So regionally, that's definitely the bulk is coming out of Ontario. Although again, that just looks like a more or less a straight population breakdown, with the obvious exception, right, Stéphane, that the French language survey is pretty much all Quebec, right?
Yeah. So as I said, like 96% of the French survey is Quebec.
Yeah. We have a nice. So we've got over 50% from Ontario on the English. I'm looking at the English language numbers now.
Yeah.
And then so on the French survey, it was how many from Quebec, Stéphane? 90%.
You mean from Quebec? Yeah, it's 96.
Yeah, 96. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, but you look at with 10% Alberta, or well, something over 10% Alberta. I'm just looking at a chart here, so I don't have the actual numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess they're below, aren't they? Oh, there we go. 10% Alberta, 13% British Columbia.
Yeah.
6 Manitoba, 8 New Brunswick. I don't have to go through it all, but anyways, it looks like a pretty good regional breakdown by population. So we got a nice representation there, and then 15% in from the U.S. So hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Even got some of that in there.
Yeah, so I feel then again, we got a good participation from everywhere.
Right. So here's the big question, and Stéphane, why don't you start us off by telling us, I guess, why you wanted to ask this one. What do you consider construction to be an essential service? What was the idea there?
Well, I mean, because construction was just shut down, I think the day of or the day before in Quebec. So when we started discussing that, so basically when you shut down all construction aside from emergency construction, if something happens at a hospital or that type of stuff, then it means that the government doesn't consider it to be an essential service, or not to the level, not like other essential services. So there was different opinion within the membership, of course. So we wanted to poll and see, do our member, do they think that construction is an essential service? So it was just like to not have to just assume and think, I heard this guy said that, this guy, well, so I guess we are, or I guess we're not, but we wanted to open it to as many people as possible.
Well, I know I was really surprised when the initial list came out from Ontario at just how broad it was. I mean, it was really any construction and any manufacturing was deemed an essential service. I guess I get that. I think they had to do things at speed, and there wasn't really time to parse things down to the individual sectors or whatever that might actually be involved in I don't know, but, building a hospital. Like, I mean, how many hospitals have window and door installations going on that are critical to their functioning? Probably not. Probably not that many. But at any rate, it was. It certainly was something that you could have different opinions about. Laura, have you seen examples out there of anybody doing something that you would consider being critical to keeping things going, or what's your take on it?
I haven't come across anything critical. I really thought that I would have a lot of email requests asking what we're doing, where their orders are, when they can come and get them. I'd assumed that some of the orders that we already had in queue would have been a higher priority, and whatever ones those were, those would come to surface and I would get requests. And over the past month, I haven't.
Yeah. Everybody's kind of gone to ground, haven't they?
Yeah. And from what the Minister of Health is indicating yesterday, it looks like that was a good thing to do, and things are starting to flatten out.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it? They the numbers really seem to have been, but what's been more surprising to me has been the level of participation. Like, there really hasn't. I mean, everyone's doing it, right? Everyone's gone home and is kind of staying in, right? And I mean, it makes it pretty hard to keep any kind of a window installation business going.
And we're predominantly a dealer-based business, and most of the orders that we have are replacement.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can't get out to somebody's house,
Yeah, I only know of a few vinyl window companies that kept going, and I'm assuming it's because they were predominantly new construction based. But the supplier side would probably be able to provide a better insight there, because they know who's still taking deliveries.
So something I wanted to point out though, so in the English survey, we have 67, give or take, percent saying that construction is an essential service. But when you look, if you look at the French survey with the same question, we're 100% opposite. So 36% says yes, they're an essential service, but 64 says no. So it's almost like the complete opposite, right? The only way, there's one thing that might explain it, as I said, is also because we released that survey the day after everything was shut down anyway. So maybe like people had time to think about it and decide, okay, I guess it's not. It might be that, it might not be that, but what do you guys think?
Is it possible, Stéphane, that people were looking at this and answering the question in terms of what their province has said, right?
Yeah.
Because in Quebec, they very definitely said that most construction was not an essential service. That was the actual declaration, right? It was only critical, things that were actually working on hospitals or critical infrastructure, stuff like that. All the other construction had to stop. Whereas in Ontario, and I would say, the rest of the country, I think every other jurisdiction, God knows I've been looking at it every day. It was very much that all construction was at least initially was deemed essential. It was only later that Ontario shut down some of the commercial stuff and everything residential that wasn't permanent. So do you think maybe some of the answers reflected that, Stéphane, that people were just responding to what their province had said?
Yeah, I think it's a fair assumption. I don't think there's any, like, it's really my personal opinion, but I don't think that Quebec people would have such or like rest of Canada have such different opinions just because. Like, I would have expected to be kind of the same, but because of what the government did, I guess everyone was kind of on the same page a little earlier. Like, so who's to say that if we sent this survey to Ontario when everything was shut down, like if the answers would have been different, right?
Well, the question reads, do you consider construction to be an essential service? But if somebody didn't read that, very carefully, they might have just gone, yeah, well, we've been deemed an essential service. So there we go.
Yeah.
So Patrick, perhaps leadership influences how people respond to this?
Yes, there is that. There is that. Although, but to Stéphane's point, I don't think the Quebec manufacturers wanted to shut down any more than the Ontario ones did, or vice versa, right?
Mhm.
So it is a little strange that there's such a discrepancy in the Quebec versus the Ontario results, right?
Mhm.
The only other thing I thought of was that Quebec does tend to have a unionized workforce, but actually, see, the news stories that I saw coming out in the initial days of this was that the Quebec unions were saying they wanted to stay on the job. Now, maybe that's because they didn't know yet that they'd be getting paid if they went off, because those government programs hadn't been announced yet. But
Mhm.
the Quebec unions were saying initially, as Quebec was shutting down construction, they were saying they wanted to stay on the job, and that was the unions, not the owners. So maybe there's a different dynamic there. Laura, do you think the residential builds that were ongoing are starting to peter out? Or any idea there that because Ontario's rule was permitted construction can go forward on residential builds and then nothing new. I'm wondering how long that work is going to take to run out.
A lot of the permits that went out, they were tract build homes, and I'm still seeing those make some progress, but I think limiting the amount of trades that are on site and just trying to strategize how to move forward in construction with the current protocol, it's slowing things down. So if everything stayed exactly as it is, I can only assume that there's still a good amount of work to be had out there, that the trades that are able to participate are still working, and homes are still being built. But I have a feeling it's all going to change soon. We're
It's
gonna
got to
start
be
seeing a new
slow.
normal.
Progress has got to be slow on the work sites.
It is, but it's still progress.
Yeah, it's still something. Exactly. I have, by the way, a little a slideshow that I found online, a link to it on my COVID-19 update on the Fenestration Review website, with a slideshow of different things people have done to make their construction sites compatible for the pandemic, and they built little built hand washing stations,
Mhm.
and there's some good photos of the guys, trying to do things all spaced out.
I can only imagine how challenging it is, because you usually have teams going in, because it takes a team to get this done. At the manufacturing level, I think it could even be easier to accommodate protocol, because it's just a more consistent environment.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
More
like on
structure.
actually, while we're on it, tell us about it, Laura. You guys just reopened up.
Yes.
So what's happening on the floor at Eurovinyl these days?
Just yesterday, we brought back some of our team. It's scaled down, certainly, and everybody is spread out. So we've had to encourage constant hand washing, of course. Everybody's wearing gloves, masks, and we're trying to accommodate protocol while getting some of the orders that we had in queue go through. We're trying now to figure out how long it takes us to manufacture units, because there's no status quo. But the team that we do have there, they were eager to get back. I think some of the people that we called back had opted not to, and I feel that that's going to be very common in the industry for the next few weeks. There really isn't a great advantage to coming back into work because of the programs that are available, which ultimately have kept us all safe and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So we completely understand, and we're just going to work with this as we make progress.
It's so down to personal circumstances, right? Because I know I was faced with the decision back at the start of March whether to go to Las Vegas for the big construction show that was going on down there. There was a show called Con Expo. It's 130,000 people from all over the world, and it was like March 12th. It was the worst possible timing you can imagine. And my decision revolved around my decision revolved around my mother-in-law, who is doing chemotherapy for breast cancer, and I was thinking about whether I could come back here carrying this thing and potentially her catching it, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of those workers on your shop floor, Laura, are going to be going the same calculation. Even if they're confident they can survive it, what about somebody at home? What if they have old relatives?
Right. There are a lot of multifamily dwellings they have their parents living with them, their kids. We completely understand. So it's just work with what we can and be cautious and be safe. And move forward.
Sorry, Stéphane, I'm derailing your survey talk here.
No, I mean it's great, and that's why it's a good thing to have Laura with us today, because like we can go over the numbers, but ultimately what we want to do is kind of see how it's going for real. So it's great to have this discussion. I just wanted to point out that when we go to the fenestration side, because we discussed construction, and now we're talking a little bit more on the manufacturer side, but it's a really, really interesting thing too is in the English survey we got 67% saying that they consider fenestration to be essential, and when you go to the Quebec one, it's like 72% that says non-essential. Wow. So like they couldn't be more opposed. And then again, I guess, Pat, to your point, that probably goes back to what we were saying, but would you think what you see in the industry, because this is a survey, right? But how you feel in the industry? Do you feel which one are the closest numbers, right? Do you think that the industry assumes that we are an essential service, or you would say that to the opposite, like we're not?
Fenestration or construct? You mean
fenestration?
Whether fenestrate and whether the window and door manufacturers consider us to be an essential service?
Yeah. So the window and door manufacturers consider themselves an essential service at 67% in the English survey, but in the French one, it's 72% that says they're not.
Yeah. See, I really feel, Stéphane, like what you were getting there were people responding to what the law or like what the regulations were in their own province. I think that like the only way I can account for that I can't see why on earth would Quebec window manufacturers have any more tendency to think they're essential or not essential than Ontario or anywhere else in the country, right? Yeah. Like it has to be that they somewhat maybe misunderstood the question and were just or just read it such that they were answering, this is what we're told, like this is what the situation is in our province. Right?
Well, I mean we could look at it this way, but the question is pretty simple. Do you consider fenestration to be an essential service? So I get.
Well, obviously no, unless it is essential, right? The question is, are they providing an essential service or not? And so you look at it and you go, well, what do I need this for?
Well,
if I have an existing hole gaping in my building, and I need to get that filled, or else everyone's going to freeze to death, I guess that's an essential service. If I'm halfway through a hospital add-on, and again, I have holes in the wall, and I need that wing completed in order to put patients in. Obviously, that's even more essential these days.
So what I would think is since it's really close to what people said for construction, I think it goes with, right? So we supply to the construction industry. So if you think that construction is essential, well, at some point they're going to need the products from the fenestration industry. So basically, construction can't keep going without fenestration and other trades. So I guess that was the thought process. That's what I would think.
That's true. That's true. Yes. The only thing I would add is there's a broader question with construction generally, because then there's all the maintenance and trades work that could need to go on in a building as a matter of safety. Like they definitely designated plumbers and electricians, for instance, to be essential, and you can see why that would have to be. Those people have to be able to go out and do their work. So what I'm saying is there's a broader range of circumstances where construction is essential, and a smaller range of circumstances where fenestration is essential. But like I said off the top, this stuff had to be drafted so fast. They couldn't let perfect be the enemy of good here. And I think it was a lot easier in most jurisdictions to just say, the whole thing, right? Like just let it all happen and tell people, look, please don't do this stuff if you don't need to. Because that was part of it in Quebec too, right? Was they said even for manufacturers, right, Laura, they said try to keep your activities to a minimum, like do the minimum you can do. Did you guys receive that sort of guidance as well, or?
Yes, I would say a big part of our decision was the podcast that I had with you. Like we were on video, and I think you physically saw me just fall apart because she made it so clear that this is coming and it's going to be very serious. And the only thing that you can do is make sure that every action that you take is essential and keep your distance. And that's what we did. It wasn't too long after that podcast that as a group, we had the conversation to figure out how are we going to keep everybody safe. We made the decision.
Suzanne was impactful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I now follow her on Twitter, and there's just so much great information. I would imagine how frustrating it could be for somebody like that who's been waving the flag of caution all these years and knowing what's going to happen, and then to actually see it happen.
Yeah. And she will be joining the Fenestration Conversations podcast this Friday.
Very nice.
Watch your inboxes, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm getting Suzanne back to give us the look ahead and to try to give us a sense of what the opening will look like or what, because see, she's been in the back rooms of all these pandemic planning things. Yeah. And she's got the nasty inside information. Everybody's mad at Theresa Tam for not saying masks. Don't use masks initially. That's all. It's all part of the disinformation campaign they've got to use to control people's behavior. They knew if they went out and said, yes, masks save you, that everyone, there'd be a rush on them. They wouldn't have them. So they literally have to lie to people and say.
Well, I guess there's that, but there's also the fact that the simple solution is wash your hands, and when you know that a simple solution, a simple action you can do, like there's nothing much more simple than that, right? But people,
and stay away and keep your distance.
But people are still trying to. Okay, but what if I do this? And what if I do this?
Right.
But why? Just wash your hands. And
my brother is like that. It's down to personalities. But there's the
mindset.
People that are always looking for a loophole. They're looking for loopholes. Like my brother's like, well, they didn't say for sure we couldn't go to the cottage, so we could just go up there. And I'm like, no, you're not supposed to travel. You're supposed to stay at home.
I found one of the trickiest things, and I know this is completely starting to go in
this
direction, but just the social aspect of it, the different mindsets and the different ways that people are approaching it. And you can see even from these surveys that a response is polarized, even from province to province or from timeline to timeline. It's quite incredible, but I'm just so glad to see that there's some progress, and that the people that did hunker down did the right thing.
Yeah, that it is. The numbers are encouraging, somewhat encouraging, at least here in Canada. Don't get me started on the States.
That's what the intent was. We assumed that if we did the right thing and we did what leaders were saying that we should do, that this would be over and done with as quickly as possible, and that we can get back to our new normal. And it looks like that's what's about to happen.
Yeah, and as I always say, if it worked, it was always going to feel like a big waste of time, which is that. So that's actually the feeling that we're all aiming for, is that this was all a terrible waste of time, and we blew it. Yeah. So
I'm really enjoying working from home.
I told I'm surprised. I thought my wife would like it more, but she's not happy with her workstation setup. Anyways, the what I'm seeing here, back to the survey, one of the things, it is interesting that the response is considering construction to be an essential service, and the responses considering fenestration to be an essential service are very close to the same number.
Yeah.
So
I think
obviously people are right, Stéphane. People feel that fenestration is part of construction, and you can't have one without the other.
It's such a crucial pinch point, Patrick. If there's something I've certainly learned from this industry, is just how much pressure we're under, especially in a new construction or renovation. There are so many other trades that are lined up that can't do anything until the building is closed up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, when you think about it, I think that the main issue in these discrepancies, it's what do you consider, like, what essential means to you, right? So I feel like you can go, well, because we thought construction was essential up to a point, and then we're like, you know what, we can do without construction for a little bit if it makes things better, but there's things that are really like essential that you can't make without. So I guess it's the level of how essential, like, it gets more complicated at some point. So
I remember what Ford kind of alluded to when he opened up or allowed the residential construction and didn't do a full shutdown, more or less like Quebec had done, was he basically said, look, you've got all these people waiting to get into houses, right? Like, let's say you've sold your house.
Yes.
And with the understanding you're moving into a new build, right? Later, the next month. Well, okay, now your house is sold. So and then your new build isn't ready because you've shut down construction. Well, now what do you do?
Well,
right?
that's why they reopened in Quebec this week, actually, for these type of situation. So a residential building that was due before July. So, but yeah, it causes problems. But I mean, it's always
Ford said we can't replace to solve this thing, we can't have people becoming homeless or moving in with others and creating large crowds of people living in a place together, because that just defeats the entire purpose.
Yeah. No, so, I mean, it's not easy. Like, any decision can be, any decision you take during a crisis like this can be picked apart, and you might be right on some point. It's really hard. Like, there's no miracle option where everyone's happy and where everything works perfect. Like,
that's for
we
sure.
know that.
Throughout this, I never did hear any kind of backlash or revolt from any industry saying,
no,
we've been deemed essential and we shouldn't be. Have you?
Right.
Fair point. I mean,
true.
Yeah, I
would say,
what
else?
Aside from construction,
even on in another magazine that I do, we have party and event rental equipment operators. Okay, so these are the people that would rent out tables, chairs, things like that to special events, right? Concerts, weddings. Weddings obviously are huge. All that kind of thing. Well, you can imagine this. You can imagine what they're facing right now, right? Their entire first half of 2020 is essentially gone. It's just gone. There's no business, zero revenue. Yet, what I never hear from them is we should have been deemed essential, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, people seem to be.
But because it wouldn't make sense,
right?
Like,
but
how do you defend?
Like, people seem to be absorbing it in the right way. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not hearing spurious arguments about whether or not you should be essential or whether or not you should be able to work. For the most part, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And to Laura's point, I think I'm trying to think. Did I hear someone that had an essential job saying no, it's not? I mean, some construction workers at first, when construction was still going, like, okay, so they were asking questions because how can they respect all the social distancing? But now they can, because of everything they put in the couple weeks they were off here in Quebec, for example. From what I know, they had time to put some measures in place to come back. But I think aside from that, I think you're right. I don't have an example. Well, aside maybe from dollar store employees who are probably wondering why they have to be open with, it's probably really hard for people, like for a business like that, where's, but
they have put in those places, at least my wife is reporting me because she's the only one who's leaving the house these days, has reported that they've got like really strict measures in place. Like when she goes to the bulk barn or the dollar store, they're like it's a new shopping cart every time.
Yeah,
like
no, I
person
get
comes
that,
in
but
at
still.
once. There's no line at the bulk barn. The staff, you show up, they let one person in the store at a time. They give you a new cart that's been all cleaned. A staff walks you around and digs out and gets your bags and gets all your stuff for you.
Your bulk barn concierge.
Your bulk barn concierge. You've got a personal shopper at the bulk barn, Laura. It's unbelievable. They're probably going to keep doing it when they're done. Everyone loves it so much.
see silver linings here.
Everything. It's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it actually, the one example, Stéphane, of that too was the commercial construction trades here in Ontario. Some of the unions were angry that they weren't shut down as well.
So that's what I mean. Like, aside from construction at first, because I saw some stuff about construction workers not wanting, which to a point can't really blame them, but so aside from that, I didn't see anything. So I want to keep us on track as much as possible.
Good luck.
I already lost that part, but I'm just trying as much as I can. So question 5 was, if you were to shut down operations or already did, please select the reason why. So I have to say, on the French side, so mostly Quebec, as I said, when we sent it, it was already done. So 95% of the people who answered were forced by the government. But still the 12%, 12 plus 8, so like 20% either didn't have enough work or just closed shop for voluntarily. Whereas if you look in the rest of Canada, 60% was forced to close, 30% was either forced to close or would wait. Like if they had to close, the government would have to close them. Mm-hmm. They would do it only if the government says we're forced. Some of them would close or closed for lack of work, like 30%, and 31% voluntarily closed. So I have to say that the 32% that voluntarily closed, at first I was a little bit surprised about that. I don't know what you guys think, but when I saw that,
I'm astonished at that number.
Okay.
That I would have thought half of that maximum would have said they were voluntarily closing, and so I guess that just shows you the level of I don't know what you'd call it, concern for staff, for customers. That 30%, a third, almost a third of window and door companies would actually shut their doors voluntarily in order to address this. Laura, I don't know, what's your reaction?
I found one of the more interesting parts of this slide is the 27 skipped. More people. There were more people that were unwilling to answer this question than any other question in the survey.
Yeah.
This was the hot button.
I mean,
a lot of people wanted to commit.
And also, I think if we relaunched that survey today, we would probably get different results.
Likely,
Because let's think that we started this survey like a couple days after it got, I'll say, really serious here. Mm-hmm. So now I think a couple weeks in, most of the people realize what it is, and maybe it would change. One thing I can share with you is that I did speak with a couple members, and one business owner in our membership simply said, you know what, it wouldn't feel right for me to be sitting working at home while staying open and having employees go out there and work. Ethically didn't feel good with that. So it could be something like that. It could be, it could be also like, I also heard that some employees were pushing so the business would stay open because they needed it to stay open financially, and they said, no, we're good, we're gonna respect social distancing, no problem. Like, they were ready to go the extra mile just to keep working normally. So that's what I got from some members. And I mean, it just goes back to there's no miracle solution here.
Well, I would assume that the majority of the manufacturers that are Fenestration Canada members are independently owned and operated. And from the stories that and the conversations that I had, one thing I really did like from the beginning of this is just how much communication there was between manufacturers. My boss and myself, we were on the phone with everybody we know just to see what everybody else is doing. And most of the homeowner, or most of the window fabricator owners, were saying that they were under a lot of pressure from their family to come home.
Right.
And just like you said, Stéphane, it would be unfair for the business owner to stay home and still have their team working at the shop. And I think that there was a lot of morality, and I think that there was a lot of decisions that had to be made that aren't typical business decisions, and it was very challenging. I think that's why a lot of people skipped this, because they didn't even know what the right answer was.
At the time, for sure. At the time when they answered, for sure, like I don't think they had enough time to get all this. Like, they were in the middle of the storm, if you will. Yeah.
Well, I think it's because of Stéphane's flawed question that didn't have "my wife made me." That's one of the responses.
We're going to see what kind of divorce rates there are in the fenestration industry. That'll be part of the next.
Forced by wife.
I mean, wife or husband, like I feel that would be included in forced by the government.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, that could actually could be the explanation, because I was gonna say, seriously, I'm laughing now because I know that's how it is. I know that's how 90% of these decisions are made.
I just want to remind you we're streaming live, so
that's right. We're streaming live, so I'm going to keep this clean.
I mean,
no, I looked at the forced by the government number, and I kind of wondered if there was some anger in there, because like outside of Quebec, no one actually was forced by the government to stop operations.
No, so
right?
So the question is, if you were to shut down or already did. So basically, what it says I won't shut down unless forced by the government.
Oh, I
or
see.
my wife.
So that's okay. Husband. You're right. Yeah, that's the way to interpret that.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I guess it goes all back to the other answers where, do we feel we're essential or not? And then we brought up the possibility that it started with the leadership and the message by provinces. So, like it just all seems to tie to just be all together, because, yeah, I mean, if the government doesn't force you, that also means that high-ranked specialists don't think you should be forced to be closed. So at some point, I mean, there's value to that too. Like if, health specialist at the government level says, no, it's fine, you can keep working, respecting social distancing. Well, I mean, you're a business owner of a door and window company, and the government tells you, well, you're okay to stay open. I mean, it's the same. If they tell you you're not okay, who are you? What expertise do you have to decide I'm staying open? But the opposite is also true. Mm-hmm. If the government says you're okay to stay open, well, why would I debate that?
Why would I make another decision? The government has all the health experts.
Yeah.
Like, if they're saying it's okay, then it must be okay.
And then it goes back to the ethical question. Like, do I feel okay with that? But then again, if your employees are saying, we're fine with that, we want to go to work, and, so it's the one thing I feel for sure that we can't do with this whole thing is to judge people's decisions, especially on, because there's so many different aspects to them, and we know there's one right way, if you will, to on the health side, but economically, what's the right way? Is it like a good balance between safety and keeping our activities as much as possible? That might be it. I mean,
It'll be interesting, Stéphane, over the next few weeks to see what companies reopen and how successful they are in bringing their team back.
Yeah.
So you mean, so the actual employees, will they agree to go and work?
Because they have that decision.
Yeah.
And it's good that they do.
Yeah,
I feel.
I mean, I think, yeah.
Laura, what have you heard on that? Because I want to get a lawyer on to do a legal cast, but what have you heard about the employee's right to refuse work? Does that all apply if they're just worried about catching COVID?
Well, currently it applies. You can't. It would be very difficult to let somebody go at this point. It'll be interesting to see what new rules and legislation come through. But I already know of one other company that tried to open up last week, and they weren't able to because they couldn't get key employees to come back.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's also I'll say not the goal, but it's also what this support provided by the government does, and it's why they're doing it, right? So now people can also at least make their own decision and not be forced, for money considerations. Yeah, but yeah.
It could be quite the sway in mindset before people are ready to go back to work and before people are ready to have trades come through their own home. So it's going to be a challenge for our industry, because not only do we have to make a safe and healthy environment for everybody to come back and feel confident in what they're doing every day, but also homeowners need to start opening their doors too. That's a pretty big sway. That's going to be quite the challenge, and I think media will probably have a major influence on that.
I was wondering. I mean, historically, everyone or most of the people, and as a society, we have a short memory. It took, let's say, 3-4 weeks. It took like a month or so of this coming into our lives in other countries, and then it was like, okay, well, it's a big flu, it's dangerous, but not too bad, and people were traveling, like you just said it, Patrick. You were considering maybe going to a trade show, and there was like tons of people at that trade show still, all that. So, and then it started to be a real thing in Canada. So we had the advantage to have a couple weeks experience because of the other countries who already had it and what they did wrong, what they did good. So it was easier for us to kind of put something in place, I would guess. But it took, like, the first week was like, well, okay, what is it? Is it that bad? Blah, blah, blah. And then it became, no, it's a real thing. And as you said, everyone kind of proceeded, like they all got in and did what they had to do. But this happened within 3 weeks, right? Yeah. So let's say we're 3-4 weeks, 5 weeks, a month, like 2 months with nothing bad happening, no spikes. So a whole society mindset changed in 3 weeks. Why wouldn't it change back to almost what it was before if we're like 2 months without any problem? Even if we get experts saying, it could come back, it could, but I feel that as soon as it's kind of stable everywhere in the world, I'm not sure that people will, I don't know, like I've just been thinking about that lately. Like
my sense is that this has gotten people's attention.
Yeah.
And in a way that things like SARS and H1N1 never did. This to me feels big enough to be a long-term changer of a lot of things. I think if nothing else, health authorities are going to be able to ask for whatever they want
Mm-hmm.
in terms of preparedness for the future,
Mm-hmm.
and have that in place, extra capacity, stockpiles of PPE, that kind of thing. At least for a few years, they're not going to have any trouble getting budget for all of that kind of stuff. I think that I think there's going to be a level of relaxation about debt and deficits and stuff like that, that hasn't been there before. I think there's going to be. I don't think that necessarily the health measures are going to stick around longer than they have to, right? Like, I think once public health authorities say, okay, you can shake hands again, people will start doing that again. But that's my opinion.
Well,
I think in terms of I think there's going to be long-term attitude change, definitely about specifically pandemic preparedness.
No,
right?
yeah, that for sure. But I mean, like, because we're talking about, will people buy products again, let people into their homes to install and that. So,
Yeah.
So from what I see here, and just as an example, I'm in a small region where there's zero cases. So, so like, 50 kilometers from me, there's maybe like, I don't remember. I think it's like 16, not much, maybe 26.
That would be such a relief, Stéphane.
Wow.
It is in Toronto. It's intense.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is, at first people thought we had like one case. So every, like, the first 2-3 weeks, everyone was doing what they were supposed to do, and when it was zero for weeks and like days and days and a week and a half and 2 weeks, like, I can tell you that people do respect social distancing. But I mean, personally, I stay home, but I see a lot more traffic, people, like, not everything is open, but they're way less careful than when it was like just 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that we have zero case, it kind of got in people, like, even if you're all aware. And so I'm just saying, let's think about that on a larger scale, and I wouldn't be surprised that just as a society we'll start acting almost normal again, aside from maybe why don't we keep these sanitary measures? Like, it's not a big deal to stay 2 meters apart as much as possible. It's not a big deal to not grab everything at the grocery store without, it's not a big deal to wash your hands as much as possible. Like, all this stuff could stay. But I think, like, in terms of buying, building, renovating, I don't know. Like, maybe I'm optimistic, but I have a feeling where, like, why wouldn't it just pick back up? Like, why not?
The dealer conversations that I've had, they're anticipating that protocols, like new safety measures, will be the norm, at least for the next few months, if not, who knows, like up to a year.
Mm-hmm.
But they would be going into homes and they would have shoe covers and they would wear a mask and gloves and such, just anything that they can to ensure that everybody's health and safety is considered, because you're right, it will start to change back over. It's just, we'll see how long it takes before that really happens, especially on a broader scale. And hopefully that there will be some kind of programs available out there to reignite the economy, because the economics behind all of this is a whole other podcast.
And I think travel will be affected, like events and travel, and for a longer period than like normal, I'll say, like general economy, like, like buying for us, like in our industry, door and windows, but like stuff in general. And I think once your work is stabilized and once the health part is kind of stabilized as much as possible, like, it's not for nothing that Amazon just got a huge boost in their sales. Even if in these times where you'd think people won't buy what they don't like 100% need, but it's been proven that it's like, okay, I'm stuck at home, I need this, I'll buy it off Amazon instead of going out. But you're still a consumer, you're still buying stuff despite all of this. So
a pretty good chance you're not going to be traveling too much this year, so perhaps work on your home and get new windows.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah. Well, there's
Well,
not going to be a lot of
that kind of gets us
summer
into the
vacation.
next slide, right,
Yeah.
Stéphane, that Q6, because the question is, would you be able to quickly restart your operations? What is the idea that to help out with an emergency?
Yeah, so at first when we asked the question, it was like we said it. So let's say they shut down construction and us and fenestration, and something happens, windows, like something happens in a hospital and we need to reconstruct something. There could be like tons of emergency, or maybe like government needs glass and frames to protect. So I got some calls in that line where, okay, what is it your industry could produce as material, like how you call that, like protection equipment. So we just wanted to have like a database whenever the government reaches out to us. Okay, so who is it we should call if we need a bunch of window to finish this project, or so just to have a database. So that's why we asked it, and we got great responses. Like, I mean, we got a lot of people to step up, and we asked if they were able to restart quickly. Then again, what's quickly? I mean, this can change depending on who you're asking to, but the goal was to have a database and send it to the government, and then if they need, they'll go through the list and try and find what they need. So in Quebec, we had another like 80% too. So basically, I would say 8.5, 8 out of 10 people in the old industry were ready. If they're shut down, they're ready to come back up to help.
At least they think they're ready. Like Laura says, depending if their workers actually come back to them or not.
Yeah. Yeah, but I saw that it's really different when the government's asking out of, we need your help. Like, can you guys help? It's easier to actually, for someone to be like, okay, it's risky, but I'll still do it because I can do it. When it's like, come back to work because we're gonna sell windows, well, then maybe people are like, okay, but right now, because and I had discussion with members, like you're showing seminars about technical stuff, you're discussing installation, like as if nothing happened, in a sense. And some people are like, great, that's the good timing for that, and we have time to learn, so that's why we offer it. But there's a lot of people also that, as much as they want, they're like, they're not in the right mindset to even talk or think about that. It just seems kind of an alien topic to talk about, whereas in normal times it's all our membership wants to talk about all the time.
It's a fantastic point, and Laura, I know you've got to have seen it, and we're seeing it here. Sales is impossible right now. Like you can't go to somebody and say, hey, spend your money. Like, it feels wrong,
I'm finding that even with marketing, and we do marketing with Fenestration Review, and I have some pieces that I got on my calendar today. I'm supposed to start working on them. I don't know what my message is supposed to be now. I'm really at a loss. Do we just talk about what's happening and show appreciation for what everybody's done, or do I just keep my mouth shut? Do I talk about Windows? Is it a good distraction? We have so many cool things that we're working on, but I just don't know if right now is the time to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is I have we have things at the magazine that we're promoting. We've got events that we're still trying to do in the fall. If everything goes, we're everybody listening to us is involved in selling something, and it's so weird. It's like the only time in history I can remember that you don't feel like you can go out there with your regular message and just say, hey, buy a window because it's great.
Yeah.
You have to come with we're here to help you in this tough time, like.
No, but I think the main point is that it's not, do they wanna, it's more about, you're asking people to spend money that they don't know if they're gonna have in a month, right? So it's not. That's why. That's the main thing. It's not just about Is it the right timing? Is it the right mindset? It's just, I don't know. How should I commit? How would I commit to a sponsorship? How would I commit to buy a window or a door or, it's more of a, yeah, I want to, but give me a couple weeks or month or so to make sure that this all, so that's kind of why I'm saying, I think as soon as everything is more stable, like everything that was kind of paused and on hold, people might go, okay, let's do this. Let's get all this done. We're good. We're past it. I know it's optimistic, but I just have this feeling where everyone's going to need stuff at the same time and is going to want stuff at the same time because their money's secured. We're through it, and like it or don't like it, economy is going to need to pick up.
I absolutely agree, Stéphane. There's one group of people that have maintained optimism, and if anything, they're kind of resistant to this and just wanting it to be over and done with. And that would be anybody that I worked on new construction projects that don't have their building permit. They're just waiting for the permit office to get back in, and they want their permit and they want to keep going, and they're just trying to predict how to line up their trades for the late summer, fall. Now that their build isn't happening this spring. So there's definitely business to be had out there, and the people that were already in queue are still chomping at the bit, which we're so grateful for.
Laura, that echoes absolutely, like on the macroeconomic talk that I follow a lot. The opinions are all over the place. You've got people talking about, oh, this long-term damage and oh God, the economy's going to take forever to recover, and then you swing it all the way the other way. So I'm forced to kind of parse it out and make my own judgment. And honestly, I heard a talk from a guy at the EDC that I actually wrote up on the magazine site. There was another talk from a guy Deputy Chief Economist for CIBC at the Ontario Construction Secretariat earlier, like just before all of this broke. The indicators going into this pandemic were so strong, really in most of the sectors of the economy and housing as well. We have a bit of a bubble, but we've kind of been living with that for like 10 years. And the indicators are very strong. Companies had orders on the books. People were willing to work at almost full employment at the wages that were being offered out there. Consumer indicators strong. Everything's strong. And then you get this artificial, right? This sudden, no, now you can't do any of this stuff, right? And yes, there's a lot of wailing and gnashing and teeth of wringing in hands, and definitely the debts and deficits and government sovereign debt is going to go crazy. We know that, but interest rates are low, and the I'm predicting a big V-shaped recovery. Like I really think when the lid comes off, and to Stéphane's point, people are sitting around just waiting to go, right? My daughter's upstairs, and she hasn't been able to go out and spend every nickel she gets like she normally does.
It's gonna be a baller
for a month now. Like she's the microcosm for the entire Canadian consumer at this moment. She's been trapped in her room without being able to go to Sephora. Although she could still order it online, but that's another story. But yeah, so like this is my prediction, and people can come back and shoot me later, but I think we're in for a strong recovery. I really do.
Let's hope. That's the only thing we can hope for, right?
Yeah.
There was just one other aspect, if I could bring it up. There was huge penalty if there was a business that started up and didn't align with the new rules and regulations. It was like a $500,000 fee and a year prison term. It was huge. I haven't heard of this actually taking place with any companies, and I haven't even heard of any window companies or any industry really being told that they need to close down. Have you heard anything about that? Does that sound familiar at all?
Outside of those meat packing plants in Alberta, they had a they had a big issue there, but that was an outbreak. It wasn't deemed to be anyone's fault. They were allowed to be operating. They were very much an essential service. In fact, my wife is predicting a meat shortage because of this. So yeah, I haven't heard of anyone getting fined or anything. Stéphane, what about you?
No, didn't hear of anything. I thought also it was about if you took advantage of different government programs without needing it. There was also like fine, or I don't know if they were specific, but it sucks to say, but I would expect that to happen more than like operating without respecting rules, because it's on the field. It just takes one employee to, raise the flag, and then you're in trouble. And I mean, it would be a really questionable thing to do, to operate like that. And I don't think our industry, like I like to think that our industry is way more ethical than that.
Yeah, and it goes a little bit to the what I was talking about earlier with the control of information to the public. They put those penalties and things in place to get people's attention, right? Mm-hmm. And to send the message, hey, we're serious about this. And I think if that message comes across, we only need to look south of the border to see what bad messaging does. Mm-hmm. Once they have everyone's attention, no one's going to risk, no one's going to risk it for the most part, right?
No, I think you're right.
Yeah. So
we've been talking about that for an hour and 20 minutes. We covered the whole survey. Is there anything else? I'm just trying to be mindful of the time. I know that me included, we just like to talk to someone these times. I got caught with that in a couple meetings. Like, people with tons of work to do, and I'm like, yeah, what about this? I need to go back to work. Yeah, okay, cool. But
well, thank you for including me. I didn't know it was going to be video, so now I'm like broadcast without my Sephora makeup, but here I am.
You don't need it, Laura. You're perfect. Just the way
I assure you, I smell great.
Yeah.
I promise.
Hey, I actually showered for this.
I can tell.
That's rare.
Okay.
Oh my God, we better get off of here.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. It's a good sign. So
listen, I'll wrap it up. I want to say thanks to Laura Weil, Eurovinyl Windows.
Thank you for having me.
Say thanks to Stéphane Labelle,
as always, from
Fenestration Canada. This has been Fenestration in Canada, brought to you by UL Labs and Quanex Building Products. What a great group. And we will see you again next time.
Bye, everyone.